Friday evenings in Riverdale, a small town in Ohio, always brought a special atmosphere to the Maple Grove restaurant. Lewis Harrison parked his gray Chevrolet Silverado near the main entrance and paused for a moment, looking at the familiar sign. 50 is the age when a man begins to rethink his life, especially after a divorce that was finalized 3 months ago. Harrison's construction company, which he founded 22 years ago, was thriving. His crews were building housing complexes throughout the county, and contracts with the municipality provided a steady income. The house on Elm Street, where he now lived alone, was worth $400,000, a considerable amount of money for Riverdale. But money did not fill the void left by Sandra's departure. 25 years of marriage ended with the trite phrase, "We've grown apart." Sandra took half of the assets and moved to Columbus to live with her sister. Their son, David, who worked for his father's company, had a strained relationship with him. His parents' divorce had affected him just as much. Louis pushed open the restaurant door, and the bell above the entrance rang softly. Maple Grove was the place where the local elite held business dinners and family celebrations. Dark wood, subdued lighting, white tablecloths, everything here exuded the respectability of a provincial establishment. Behind the hostess stand stood a girl he had never seen before. 20 years old, no more, with chestnut hair pulled back into a neat ponytail and bright green eyes. Her black uniform blouse emphasized her slender figure, and her smile seemed sincere, not forced, as is often the case with many service industry workers. "Welcome to Maple Grove. Table for one?" she asked, picking up the menu. "Yes, please." "By the window if possible," replied Louis, involuntarily noticing the melodiousness of her voice. The girl led him to a table near the large panoramic windows overlooking the main street of the city. The evening lights of the street lamps created a cozy atmosphere. "My name is Melissa, and I'll be your server tonight. Would you like to start with drinks?" She placed the menu and a glass of ice water in front of him. Melissa Carter had been working at Maple Grove for 8 months, ever since she dropped out of college. $20,000 in student loans hung over her like a heavy burden, and her single mother, who had raised her in a trailer park on the outskirts of town, couldn't help with the cost of her education. The restaurant job paid about $1,200 a month, including tips. Not much for a young woman with ambitions. Every evening, she watched the wealthy residents of Riverdale dine at the restaurant without a second thought about the bill. Businessmen, doctors, lawyers, people who could afford to order an $80 bottle of wine just because. Melissa quickly learned to distinguish customers by their clothes, watches, and mannerisms. And the man sitting at the window table now clearly belonged to the category of wealthy singles. "Whiskey on the rocks, Jameson, if you have it," Louis said, studying the menu. "Of course. As for food, I recommend the ribeye steak. Our chef prepares it excellently. Or, if you prefer fish, we have a special salmon in maple sauce today." Louis looked up from the menu. The girl spoke with enthusiasm, but without being pushy. Her manner exuded a professionalism rare for someone her age. "The steak sounds great." "Medium rare. And your recommendation for a side dish?" "Potato gratin and grilled asparagus would be a great accompaniment to the steak." Melissa smiled as she wrote down the order. When she left, Louis couldn't help but watch her confident movements between the tables. She had a special energy about her, an ambition that set her apart from the other waiters. Melissa brought the whiskey and, pouring water, remarked, "Forgive my curiosity, but are you Lewis Harrison? The owner of the construction company?" "Guilty," he smiled. "How did you know?" "Your company built a new residential complex near our neighborhood. Beautiful houses. I often drove past the construction site on my way to work." "Thank you. We try to create quality housing for people." Lewis took a sip of whiskey. "How long have you been working here?" 8 months. Before that, I was in college, but circumstances forced me to take a break." Melissa's voice sounded slightly sad. "I understand. Education is expensive these days." "Very expensive," she agreed. "But I haven't given up hope of going back to school. I was studying business administration." I dream of starting my own business someday." Louis nodded understandingly. In his youth, he also started small, first working as a simple builder, then as a foreman, and only at the age of 28 did he decide to start his own company. Melissa brought the steak, which turned out to be truly excellently cooked. She came over to the table several times to ask if everything was okay, and each time they struck up a little conversation. Louis talked about his work, and she talked about her plans for the future. The conversation flowed easily and naturally. "Do you often have dinner here?" Melissa asked as she cleared away the empty plates. "A couple of times a week. After the divorce, I don't really feel like cooking at home," he said without self-pity, simply stating a fact. "I sympathize. Divorce is always hard," she said sincerely. "It's part of life. It happens." Louis took out his wallet. "How much is the bill?" $52. He put $70 on the table. "Thanks for the great service, Melissa." Her eyes widened in surprise. The tip was almost 35% of the bill. "Thank you so much. That's very generous." "You earned it. See you next time." As he left the restaurant, Louis felt something new, an interest in life that he hadn't felt in many months. The young waitress had made a pleasant impression on him, not only with her appearance, but also with her intelligence, ambition, and manner of communication. Melissa watched his pickup truck disappear into the evening traffic and clutched the tip tightly in her hand. $17 was more than she usually received from a single customer in an entire evening. But the money wasn't the main thing. Louis Harrison was interested in her as a person, not just as a waitress, and she was interested in him. Over the next 2 days, Melissa thought about this encounter. Harrison was clearly lonely, recently divorced, and financially secure. He was a man in his prime who could offer the woman who ended up with him a completely different life. On Monday evening, Louis appeared at the restaurant again. This time, Melissa greeted him like an old friend. "Mr. Harrison, how are things at the construction site?" "Not bad." "How are your plans for the future coming along?" "Still in the works?" She laughed. "Same table?" Over dinner, their conversation became even more intimate. Louis talked about the difficulties of divorce, about how hard it was to get used to being alone after a quarter of a century of marriage. Melissa shared her dreams of education, her desire to break out of the vicious circle of low-paying jobs. "What's stopping you from going back to college?" he asked. $20,000 in debt and the need to pay for housing, Melissa replied bluntly. "I see. The country's education system needs reform, definitely. But for now, we have to work with what we have." As he left, Louis left another generous tip and promised to come back next week. That's how their acquaintance began. A middle-aged man going through a personal crisis and a young woman striving to change her life. So far, these were just friendly conversations between a regular customer and an attentive waitress. But even then, at the earliest stage, there was an element of mutual interest in their relationship that went beyond ordinary service. Melissa saw in Louis an opportunity, a gentle, lonely, financially secure man who could be the key to a better life. Louis saw in her the youth, energy, and genuine interest that he had been missing so much since his divorce. Neither of them had any idea what this acquaintance would lead to and what tragedy it would end in a few months later. A month after they first met, the relationship between Louis and Melissa went beyond casual encounters at the restaurant. It all started on that rainy Thursday in October when Louis walked into Maple Grove and found Melissa working a double shift for a sick colleague. "You look tired," he remarked when she approached his table around 9:30 in the evening. 14 hours on my feet is a challenge," Melissa admitted, brushing a stray strand of hair from her forehead. "But the money is welcome." "How do you get home?" "The buses don't run at this hour. I walk. It's only a half-hour walk through the park." Louis frowned. "Through the park at this hour? It's not safe. Let me give you a ride." Melissa hesitated for just a second. "If it's not too much trouble." After work, she got into his pickup truck and they drove through sleepy Riverdale to the trailer park on the outskirts of town. On the way, they talked about work, life in a small town, and plans for the future. When they stopped near her trailer, a modest house on wheels with peeling paint, Melissa felt embarrassed for a moment. "Sorry, it's not the most prestigious place to live." "We all have to start somewhere," Louis said gently. "I grew up in an apartment above my father's garage." That ride was the first of many. Louis began giving Melissa regular rides home after her late shifts, and their trips grew longer. Sometimes they would stop at the lake on the outskirts of town just to talk. Gradually, the age difference ceased to be an obstacle. "You know what I like about you?" Louis asked one evening as they sat in his pickup truck, looking at the starry sky above the lake. "What?" Melissa turned to him, her green eyes sparkling in the moonlight. "You don't complain. A lot of people in your situation do nothing but whine about how unfair life is, but you just work and make plans. Complaining never made anyone rich," she smiled. "It's better to spend your energy looking for opportunities." It was then that Louis realized he felt more than just friendly affection for her, and Melissa realized that her plan was working. Their first kiss happened 2 weeks later, when Louis invited her to dinner, not at Maple Grove, but at an expensive French restaurant in a neighboring town. Melissa spent her last savings on a new dress, a simple but elegant black dress from a discount store that accentuated her youthful beauty. "You look stunning," Louis said when he picked her up from the trailer. Over dinner, he talked about his travels around the country for work, and she listened intently and asked intelligent questions about business. When he drove her home, there was a special atmosphere between them. "Melissa, I don't want to rush things, but I think there's something special between us." "I think so too," she replied quietly. Their kiss was tender and cautious, the kiss of a man who was afraid of seeming pushy, and a woman who knew exactly what she wanted. From that moment on, their relationship developed rapidly. Louis began buying Melissa gifts, modest ones at first. A business book she had mentioned, a beautiful handbag, gold earrings. Melissa accepted the gifts with gratitude, but without excessive enthusiasm, just enough to make Louis feel like a generous man, but not so much as to appear mercenary. "You don't have to spend money on me," she said each time. "I want to make you happy," he replied. And it was true. The first major purchase was a car, a used 2018 Honda Civic for $14,000. Not a luxury, but a reliable car that solved Melissa's transportation problem. "It's too expensive, Louis." "I can't accept it," she protested, standing outside the dealership. "You can and you will. You work late, and I'll feel better knowing you're getting home safely." Melissa hugged him, and there was so much gratitude and tenderness in that embrace that Louis felt like a real man, a protector and a pillar of strength. But not everyone around Louis shared his enthusiasm for the new relationship. The first to express doubts was his son David. 25-year-old David Harrison worked as a foreman in his father's company and was preparing to take over the reins in time. His parents' divorce had hit him hard, but he hoped his father would find a suitable woman of his age and status. "Dad, I need to talk to you," David said as he walked into his father's office in November. "Of course. What's the matter?" "It's about your new girlfriend." "Melissa." Louis tensed. "So what?" "She's young. Very young. And I heard you bought her a car." "David, I'm 50, not 70, and I'm a grown man capable of making my own decisions." "I understand. But think about it. What could a 20-year-old girl possibly want with a man your age other than money?" Louis stood up from the table. "Maybe mutual respect? Shared interests? Or do you think I'm so unattractive that a young woman can't have genuine feelings for me?" "That's not it." "Then what is it? Are you afraid for your inheritance?" David blushed. "That's unfair, and you know it." "I know. I'm sorry. But you have to understand me too. For the first time in many years, I feel alive. Melissa is smart, ambitious. She sees me as more than just a source of money. I hope you're right, David said grimly, heading for the door. But his son wasn't the only one who had doubts. Margaret Wilson, a neighbor and longtime friend of the Harrison family, also sounded the alarm. The 45-year-old divorced math teacher at the local school had known Louis for over 10 years and felt it was her duty to warn him against making mistakes. "Louis, dear, I saw you with that girl at the mall," Margaret said when they met at the mailboxes. "Melissa, so what? She's very young and very, how should I put it, interested in expensive shopping." Louis sighed. "Margaret, not you too. David already lectured me. Because we're worried about you. After a divorce, you're vulnerable, and some people might take advantage of that. Melissa isn't like that. How do you know? You've only known her for 2 months." "Long enough to know she's special." Margaret shook her head. "Be careful, Louis, that's all I ask." "That's all I..." Despite the warnings of his loved ones, the relationship between Louis and Melissa continued to develop. By December, she was practically living with him, staying over 3 or 4 times a week. Louis enjoyed her presence in the house, her youthful laughter, her energy, the warmth that had been missing since Sandra left. Melissa turned out to be a wonderful conversationalist and attentive listener. She took an interest in his work, gave practical advice, and discussed plans for the company's development. Sometimes Louis caught himself thinking that she understood the business better than his ex-wife had in all their years of marriage. "What if we open a branch in Dayton?" she suggested one day while studying the company's financial reports. "There is growing demand for housing there, and there are few serious competitors." "An interesting idea," Louis agreed, "but it will require a significant investment. It will pay for itself in 2 or 3 years, and the company will reach a new level." Conversations like this reinforced Louis's belief that he had met not just a beautiful girl, but a true partner in life and business. On New Year's Eve, Melissa officially moved in with Louis. She said that her trailer lease was expiring, and Louis offered her a place to stay. "Are you sure?" "This is a big step," she asked, although deep down she was elated. "I couldn't be more sure. I love waking up next to you." On New Year's Eve, they stood on the terrace of his house, embracing and watching the fireworks over Riverdale. Melissa was wearing a new $300 dress, another gift from Louis. Around her neck sparkled a gold necklace with small diamonds that he had given her for Christmas. "Thank you for everything," she said quietly, pressing herself against his shoulder. "For what?" "For believing in me. For giving me a chance at a better life. You deserve better," Louis replied, kissing her on the top of her head. But even in this romantic moment, new plans were already forming in Melissa's mind. Life with Louis was comfortable, but she wanted more. A ring on her finger, legal rights to his property, the opportunity to not work in a restaurant. All this seemed achievable. She just needed to be patient and wise. Meanwhile, Louis was planning to propose. Not tomorrow, not in a month, but in the near future. Melissa had become a part of his life, and he couldn't imagine his days without her. The age difference no longer seemed like an obstacle. On the contrary, his experience and her energy complemented each other perfectly. The first months of 2025 passed in a state of mutual happiness. Louis spoiled Melissa with gifts and trips, and she surrounded him with care and attention. The company was thriving, their relationship was growing stronger, and the future seemed bright. But beneath the surface of this idyll, problems were brewing that would soon change the lives of everyone involved in this story forever. The spring of 2025 brought the first serious tests to Louis and Melissa's relationship. It all started to unfold in March when she quit her job at Maple Grove. "Why should I work myself to the bone for pennies when I have you?" Melissa said, sitting in the kitchen in the silk robe Louis had given her for Valentine's Day. "I could do something more useful." "Like help you with your company, Louis." Eating breakfast before work, nodded. "If you want. But are you sure you won't regret your decision?" "Absolutely." Life is too short to waste it on a humiliating job as a waitress. At first, Louis was happy with the changes. Melissa really did start helping him with paperwork, meeting clients, and negotiating with suppliers. She quickly mastered computer programs and showed remarkable ability to organize the workflow. But with her new status came new demands. Melissa believed that as Louis's business partner, she had to look the part. "I need a new wardrobe," she declared in April, leafing through a fashion magazine. "Business suits, quality shoes, accessories. Clients need to see that the company is thriving. How much will that cost?" Louis asked cautiously. $5,000 to start. But it's an investment in the company's image, Louis agreed, even though the amount seemed excessive to him. Melissa went shopping in Columbus and returned with lots of bags from expensive stores. Designer business suits, Italian shoes, and famous brand bags. All of it cost not but almost $8,000. "You said 5,000, Louis remarked as he looked through the receipts. "I couldn't pass up those shoes. They go so well with the gray suit. And this bag is a true classic. It will last for years." Louis swallowed his objections. Melissa really did look like a successful businesswoman, and clients responded positively to her. But Melissa's appetites grew with each passing month. In May, she asked for money for advanced training in project management, $3,000 for a 2-week intensive course in Chicago. In June, she wanted to have cosmetic procedures done so she could look presentable at business meetings. Another $2,000. In July, she needed a new laptop for work for $2,500. "Melissa, maybe we should slow down with the spending," Louis cautiously suggested one evening in July as they were having dinner at home. "Slow down?" She raised an eyebrow. "Louis, I thought you understood the importance of investing in development." "I do. But in the last 4 months, we've spent over $20,000 on your needs." "My needs?" Melissa put down her fork. "These are the needs of our business. Or have you forgotten that I actually work for your company?" "I haven't forgotten. But the company is thriving without expensive handbags and cosmetic procedures." Melissa got up from the table. "I see. So you think I'm a burden, a girl who only spends your precious money." "I didn't say that. But you think so." "Fine, Louis. Maybe I should go back to the trailer park and work as a waitress again." It was the first serious argument between them, and Louis wasn't prepared for such a turn of events. Melissa went to the bedroom and didn't speak to him for 2 days. When the tension became unbearable, he was the first to seek reconciliation. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to seem stingy. It's just that sometimes I feel like we're spending too fast." "I understand your concerns," Melissa said softly, hugging him. "But trust me, all this spending will pay off. I want to help you build an empire, not just a small local company." Louis believed her, as he always had. But the seeds of doubt had been sown. The situation worsened when David became more actively involved in the conflict. Louis's son had been watching his father's spending and was horrified by what was happening. "Dad, we need to talk," he said, walking into the office at the end of July. "Melissa again." "Yes, Melissa again. Do you know how much money you've spent on her in the last 6 months?" "David, it's my money, and I'll spend it as I see fit." "Over $50,000, Dad. $50,000 in 6 months on a girl you've known for less than a year." Louis turned pale. He hadn't calculated the total amount, but the figure David quoted shocked even him. "Some of that money is an investment in the company's growth." "How much? Is the car an investment? Clothes for $8,000? Cosmetic procedures?" "Melissa helps me with my work." "Dad!" David slammed his palm on the table. "Open your eyes! She's using you. Any fool can see that." "Watch your language," Louis said sharply. "Melissa is a good girl, and I won't let you insult her. A good girl doesn't suck money out of a man like a vacuum cleaner." "Enough! You're crossing the line!" David stood up. "You know what, Dad? Do whatever you want, but don't be surprised when she disappears with your money." After his son left, Louis sat in his office for a long time, thinking about his words. $50,000. Did he really spend that much? And what did he get in return? That evening at home, he tried to talk to Melissa about their relationship. Listen, maybe we should discuss our future. What future? Melissa was wary. Well, we've been together for 9 months. Maybe it's time to take the next step. Melissa's eyes lit up. Are you talking about getting engaged? Maybe. But first, I'd like to get to know you better. Your past, your family. Melissa's expression changed. My past? What do you want to know? Everything. Where's your father? Why did you drop out of college? Do you have any debts besides your student loan? Melissa turned away. It doesn't matter. What matters is our present. It matters to me. If we're going to get married, I need to know what I'm getting myself into. What are you getting yourself into? She repeated bitterly. That's a nice way of putting it. Melissa, that's not what I meant. You did. You think I'm some kind of troubled girl with a dark past. I just want honesty between us. Melissa was silent for a long time, then said quietly, Okay. You want honesty? I have debts, not just student loans. What kind of debts? Credit cards. A personal loan. About $35,000 in total. Louis felt the ground slip away from under his feet. $35,000? How did you manage to rack up that much debt at 20? I had to live somehow. Pay for school, housing, food. Do you think you can live on a waitress's salary? Why didn't you tell me earlier? Because I knew you would react exactly like this, with condemnation and suspicion. Melissa, it's not about condemnation, but $35,000 in debt is serious. Who do you owe? Mostly banks. And one person. What person? Melissa hesitated. My friend's uncle lent me $10,000 for school, at a high interest rate. What interest rate? 25% a year. Louis gasped. That's usury. Melissa, that's illegal. But it is. People like that don't care about the law. For the first time since they had known each other, Louis saw Melissa looking scared and vulnerable. Not a calculating young woman, but a girl who was in serious trouble. Are they threatening you? Not yet. But the debt is growing every month, and I haven't paid anything in 6 months. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I could have helped. Because I didn't want to seem like a gold digger. Melissa cried with tears in her eyes. I didn't want you to think I was only with you for the money. Louis hugged her, and she burst into tears on his shoulder. At that moment, he felt a surge of tenderness and a desire to protect her from all her problems. Okay, tomorrow we'll take care of the debts. I'll pay them off. Really? Melissa looked up at him with tear-stained eyes. Yes, but no more secrets between us. Deal? Deal, she whispered. The next day, Louis transferred $35,000 to various accounts, paying off all of Melissa's debts. It was a serious blow to his savings, but he considered it an investment in their future together. Melissa was incredibly grateful. For a week, she was the perfect girlfriend, cooking, taking care of the house, not asking for money for shopping. Louis almost forgot his doubts. But in mid-August, an incident occurred that forced him to seriously reconsider their relationship. Louis came home earlier than usual and heard Melissa talking on the phone in the living room. Of course, he bought me a car. No, not a new one, a used one. We're not married yet, but we will be soon. Yes, then half of everything will be mine. No, he has no idea. Old fools always fall for young girls. Louis froze in the hallway. His heart was pounding so loudly that it seemed the whole house could hear it. I need a little more time. Yes, I understand that you need money too. Soon, I promise. He won't live forever. Anything can happen at his age. Louis quietly left the house and got into his car. His hands were shaking as he started the engine. Melissa's words echoed in his head. Old fools always fall for young girls. He won't live forever. He drove around town for an hour, trying to make sense of what he had heard. Was David right? Was Melissa really using him? When he returned home, Melissa greeted him as if nothing had happened. You're early. I thought I'd cook your favorite steak for when you got home. Who were you talking to on the phone? He asked, looking closely at her face. When? Her eyes fluttered for a moment. An hour and a half ago. When I was coming home, oh, a friend. We were discussing women's issues. Which friend? You don't know her. Jessica. We worked together at the restaurant. Louis nodded but didn't ask any more questions. He knew Melissa was lying, but he wasn't ready for an open confrontation yet. In the days that followed, he began to observe her behavior more closely. And he noticed things he had previously ignored. How she studied company documents when she thought he wasn't looking. How she photographed pages of his bank statements on her phone. How she listened intently to his conversations with his lawyer about changing his will. Meanwhile, Melissa sensed that something had changed in Louis's behavior. He had become more reserved, gave her fewer gifts, and avoided talking about the wedding. This frightened her because the plan had to work. Louis had to propose, marry her, and then she could decide what to do with him next. By the end of August, the tension between them was almost palpable. They avoided serious conversations, but both understood that something had to happen. Something that would change their relationship forever. Louis wondered whether he should ask Melissa directly about her true intentions. Melissa realized that time was running out, and if she wanted to get what she came for, she had to act decisively. The evening of September 2nd, 2025, began as usual. Louis returned home around 7 in the evening after a long day at the construction site of a new residential complex. Melissa met him in the hallway, wearing a house dress and a smile that had recently seemed insincere to him. "How's work?" she asked, helping him take off his jacket. "Fine." "The foundation for the third building is almost ready," Louis replied briefly, heading for the living room. In recent weeks, their conversations had become superficial. He no longer shared his plans for the company's development or discussed financial issues, and she had lost her former enthusiasm for his work. "I need to talk to you," Melissa said, following him. Louis poured himself a whiskey and sat down in his favorite leather armchair. "About what?" "About us. About our relationship." Melissa settled down on the sofa opposite him. "I feel like something has changed between us." "It has changed," he agreed, taking a sip of whiskey. "And what is it?" Louis was silent for a long time, staring at the amber liquid in his glass. Then he looked up at Melissa. "I know about your phone call 3 weeks ago." Melissa's face paled. "What conversation?" "About old fools who fall for young girls. About the fact that I won't live forever. About inheritance." A heavy silence hung in the air. Melissa clasped her hands together, but her voice remained steady. "You eavesdropped on my private conversations?" "I overheard them, in my own house, and I realized that I've been a complete idiot for the last 9 months. Louis, you've got it all wrong." "Wrong?" He stood up and paced the room. $85,000 for 9 months, Melissa. 85,000. And all this time you were laughing at me behind my back. "I never laughed." "No? Then what do you call talking about what a fool I am?" Melissa got up from the sofa. A cold gleam appeared in her eyes that Louis had never noticed before. "Fine. You want the truth?" "Yes, I used you. Yes, I needed the money. But didn't you get what you wanted? A young, beautiful girl by your side, the chance to feel like a real man. So you were acting all this time? And you weren't? Do you think I didn't understand what attracted you to me? It wasn't my intelligence or our similar interests. A young body and a willingness to admire you, that's what you wanted." Louis felt anger rising in his chest. "I genuinely cared about you. You cared about what I could give you in bed. That's mean and unfair." "Fair? Is it fair that some people are born into rich families and others grow up in trailer parks? Is it fair that you got a successful company and I got student loans?" "Got a company? I worked on it for 22 years. At 50, you have everything you need to be happy. I'm 20, and I have nothing. Because you prefer to cheat people instead of working honestly." Melissa laughed. shortly and bitterly. Honest work? For $1,200 a month? So that by the age of 40 I'll be as tired and broken as my mother? Better to be honest and poor than rich and dishonest. Easy to say when you have money. Wow. They stood facing each other in the living room. A middle-aged man who felt cheated and used, and a young woman who no longer hid her contempt for him. "Pack your things," Louis said quietly. "I want you out of here by tomorrow morning." "As you say," Melissa replied coldly. "But first I need to discuss something with you." "What else?" "The money you spent on me. I consider it compensation for my time and services." "Compensation?" Louis couldn't believe his ears. "You're demanding payment?" "I'm not demanding. I'm stating a fact. And there's one more thing." Melissa walked over to the desk and took a small black pistol out of the drawer. Louis froze. "What's that?" "Insurance." She held the gun with both hands, pointing the barrel at Louis. "I've invested a lot in this relationship. Time, emotions, plans for the future. And I'm not going to walk away empty-handed." "Melissa, put the gun away. You're not a killer." "How do you know who I am? You just realized you didn't know me at all." "Where did you get the gun?" "I bought it a month ago, legally, for protection." Her hands were shaking slightly, but the barrel was pointed straight at him. "You never know when you might need it. What do you want?" $100,000, cash, and I'll disappear from your life forever." "I don't have that kind of money at home." "You'll find it, in a safe, in a bank, anywhere. You have 24 hours. "What if I refuse?" Melissa smiled. "Then there will be an accident, a botched robbery, or the suicide of a desperate, lonely man. There are many possibilities." "You're crazy." "I've become a realist. You know what I've realized over the past few months? That the world is cruel, and only those who are willing to fight for their place in the sun survive." Louis slowly backed away toward the wall. Melissa followed him, keeping her gun pointed at him. "I'm sorry it ended this way, Louis. I honestly do. You're not a bad person. But you stand between me and my future." "Melissa, think about what you're doing. Murder isn't the solution to your problems." "What is the solution? Go back to waitressing? Live in poverty for the rest of my life? There are other ways." "No!" she shouted. "There are no other ways!" "I tried to be honest. I worked, studied, tried to build a career. And what did I get? Debts and hopelessness." Her voice broke into hysterical notes. Louis realized that she was on the verge of a nervous breakdown and capable of anything. "Okay," he said as calmly as possible. "Okay, Melissa. $100,000. I'll get the money when?" "Tomorrow. The banks are closed now." "You're lying. You want to buy time to call the police." "I'm not lying. There's only $20,000 in cash in the safe at home. The rest will have to come from my accounts." Melissa looked at her watch. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. "You have until midnight to get the money, all $100,000. "That's impossible." "Then you're finished." Her finger rested on the trigger. At that moment, Louis realized that she was really ready to kill him. There was no regret or fear in her eyes, only cold determination. "Wait!" he shouted. "There's a safe in the office. There might be money there." "What safe?" "Behind the painting. It holds company documents and cash for emergencies." Melissa nodded. "Let's go." And no sudden moves. They went to Louis's office on the second floor. He took the painting off the wall, revealing the door of a small safe. "Open it," Melissa ordered, standing behind him. Louis entered the code, his son David's date of birth. The safe opened, revealing documents, flash drives with data, and a stack of bills. "How much?" Melissa asked. Louis counted the money. $23,000. "Not enough." "Where's the rest?" "I told you, in the bank." "Then call the bank. They have emergency services for customers. No one's there at this hour." Suddenly, there was the sound of the front door opening and a voice from downstairs. "Dad, are you home?" David. His son had come over, as he often did in the evenings, to discuss work matters. Melissa turned pale. "Who is that?" "My son," whispered Louis. "Tell him to leave." "Dad?" David's voice was closer now, coming up the stairs. Louis looked at Melissa and saw the panic in her eyes. She was completely unprepared for anyone to interfere with her plan. "Dad, your car is in the yard. Where are you?" David was already on the second floor. In desperation, Melissa shouted, "Don't come any closer! I have a gun!" There was silence, and then David threw open the study door. Seeing Melissa with a gun in her hands, he rushed towards her, trying to knock the gun out of her hands. A struggle ensued. "Run, Dad!" David shouted, grabbing Melissa by the wrist. The first shot rang out. The bullet hit the ceiling. Louis tried to help his son, but Melissa broke free and jumped back toward the window. The second shot rang out. The bullet hit Louis in the shoulder, and he fell. "Dad!" David rushed to his father, but Melissa fired again. The third shot pierced Louis's side. The fourth hit his leg. The fifth shot hit his chest, but missed his heart. David grabbed a heavy figurine from the table and hit Melissa on the head with it. She fell, dropping the gun. "Dad! Dad, hang on." David grabbed the phone and dialed 911. "Ambulance. Police. 45 Elm Street. Man wounded. Multiple gunshot wounds." Louis was lying on the floor in a pool of blood, but he was conscious. "David, are you alive?" "I'm alive, Dad. Hang in there. The ambulance is on its way." Melissa regained consciousness but lay motionless, realizing that it was all over. 7 minutes later, ambulances and police cars pulled up to the house. Paramedics were the first to rush into the house, followed by the police. Detective Laura Benson arrived at the scene at 8:43 p.m. A 38-year-old woman with 12 years of experience in the police force, she specialized in investigating serious crimes. The scene in the office was telling. Pools of blood on the floor, 5 9mm bullet casings, signs of a struggle. Louis had already been taken to the hospital, but David and Melissa were still there. "What happened here?" Benson asked Officer Thompson, the first to arrive on the scene. "According to preliminary data, attempted murder. The victim is Louis Harrison, 50 years old, owner of a local construction company. 5 gunshot wounds. Condition serious but stable. The suspect is Melissa Carter, 20 years old, cohabiting with the victim. Witness, David Harrison, son of the victim." Benson examined the scene, noting the location of the shell casings, bloodstains, and the open safe. Then she began questioning witnesses. First, she questioned David Harrison. The young man was in shock, but remained steadfast. "Tell me what happened," said the detective, turning on the tape recorder. "I came to my father's house around 8 in the evening. I wanted to discuss work issues. I went upstairs and heard Melissa's voice. 'Don't come any closer! I have a gun!' I entered the study and saw that she was holding my father at gunpoint." "What happened next?" "I tried to disarm her. A struggle ensued. She started shooting. She hit my father 5 times. I hit her with a statuette and she lost consciousness." "Were you aware of the problems in the relationship between your father and Miss Carter?" "Yes. I warned my father that she was using him, but he didn't listen. Did you hear their conversation before the shooting started?" "No, I entered at the most critical moment." Benson then questioned Margaret Wilson, a neighbor who heard the shots. "I was in the garden when I heard the first shot," Margaret said. "I thought someone was scaring away raccoons. But then I heard 4 more shots in a row and screams. I called the police right away." "Did you know about Mr. Harrison and Miss Carter's relationship?" "Of course. I warned Louis that this girl wasn't right for him. Too young, too interested in money. Did you see anything suspicious in the last few days?" "In the last few weeks, they were clearly arguing. I heard raised voices. But I never thought it would come to this." By midnight, Benson had received the first results from the hospital. Louis Harrison was in serious but stable condition. Doctors had removed 4 bullets. 1 remained in his body but was not life-threatening. The patient was conscious and able to give a statement. Melissa Carter was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. She refused to give a statement without her lawyer present. At 1:15 a.m., Detective Benson arrived at St. Mary's Hospital to talk to the victim. The hospital room was flooded with the cold light of fluorescent lamps when Detective Laura Benson entered Lewis Harrison's room at 1:30 in the morning. The man was lying connected to various monitors, his chest and arm bandaged, but his gaze remained clear. "Mr. Harrison, I'm Detective Benson. How are you feeling?" "Like someone who's been shot 5 times, Lewis replied hoarsely. "But alive, which is good. The doctors have allowed a short conversation. I need your statement about what happened." Lewis nodded slowly. "Where should I start?" "From the beginning. How long have you known Miss Carter?" "9 months. We met last October at the restaurant where she worked as a waitress." Over the next hour, Lewis recounted the story of their relationship in detail. He talked about how Melissa had gradually entered his life, moved in with him, and how he had spent money on her. He talked about a phone conversation he had overheard that had opened his eyes to her true motives. "In total, I spent about $85,000 on her," he said. "A car, clothes, paying off debts, various courses and procedures. She always found a reason. Tell me about the events of tonight." Louis closed his eyes as he recalled. "We had a fight. I told her I knew her true motives and asked her to pack her things. Then she took out a gun." "Where did she get the gun?" "She said she bought it a month ago for protection." "Legally, what did she demand?" $100,000. She said it was payment for her time and services. She threatened to kill me if I didn't get the money by midnight." "Did you take the threat seriously?" "Not at first. I thought she was bluffing. But then I saw her eyes. She was ready to kill me." "What happened when your son arrived?" Melissa panicked. She yelled at him not to come near her and said she had a gun. David tried to disarm her, and they started fighting. Then she started shooting. Benson wrote down every word. "How many times did she shoot?" 5 times. The first shot was at the ceiling during the fight with David. The other 4 were at me when I tried to help my son." "Did she shoot with the intent to kill?" Louis paused. "Yes. She wasn't just trying to scare me. She wanted to kill me." "Did she say anything while she was shooting?" "No. She just shot. Her eyes were empty. It was as if she had already buried me emotionally." After talking to Lewis, the detective returned to the station, where new evidence awaited her. Forensic experts found Melissa's fingerprints on the gun in Harrison's house, 5 9mm shell casings, and traces of gunpowder on her hands. Ballistic tests confirmed that all the shots were fired from her weapon. On the morning of September 3rd, Melissa Carter was questioned in the presence of her lawyer. Robert Clark, the defense attorney assigned to the case, advised his client to remain silent, but Melissa decided to testify. "I didn't mean to kill him," she began, sitting at a metal table in the interrogation room. "I just wanted to scare him." "With 5 shots to vital organs?" Benson remarked skeptically. "He refused to do what I asked." "What exactly did you ask?" "I spent 9 months of my life on him. I played the role of a loving girlfriend, put up with his touching, listened to his boring stories about work. Isn't that worth compensation?" The lawyer tried to stop his client. "Melissa, don't say that." "No, let everyone know the truth," she burst out. "He manipulated me. He showered me with gifts so I would feel indebted. He thought a young girl could be won over with a dress and a dinner at a restaurant." "But you agreed to this relationship yourself," the detective remarked. "I had no choice. Work as a waitress for pennies or find a rich patron. In this society, people like me have no other options." "Tell me about the events of the evening of September 2nd. Melissa sighed. "He said he knew about my plans. He demanded that I leave. I realized I was losing everything I had worked for over the past 9 months. So you got a gun? So I decided to get fair compensation. $100,000 is less than what he would have spent on his wife over several years of marriage. But he refused to pay. He called me a blackmailer. He said he'd rather die than give me the money." "And you decided to grant his wish?" Melissa fell silent, realizing she had said too much. In the days that followed, The investigation gathered extensive evidence. Bank records confirmed that Lewis had spent $87,000 on Melissa over 9 months. Neighbors testified that they had heard arguments between them in recent weeks. Lewis's colleagues confirmed that he had complained about his girlfriend's increasing financial demands. David Harrison's testimony was particularly important. She shot him deliberately. When her father fell after the first shot, she continued to shoot. It was not self-defense or an accident. It was attempted murder. On September 18th, the prosecution charged Melissa Carter with first-degree attempted murder, extortion, and illegal possession of a firearm. The trial began on November 15, 2025, in District Court. Prosecutor James presented the jury with a detailed picture of the crime. The defendant deceived a trusting man for 9 months, swindling him out of $87,000. When her plans were exposed, she tried to kill him to get more money. 5 shots at point-blank range is not a threat. It's attempted murder. The defense tried to portray Melissa as a victim of circumstances. My client is a young woman from a dysfunctional family who found herself dependent on a much older man. She acted in the heat of the moment when she realized she was losing her home and livelihood. But Melissa's own testimony destroyed the defense's version. When asked by the prosecutor about her motives for the crime, she replied, "I deserved that money. I gave him what he wanted, and I was entitled to compensation." The key moment in the trial was the testimony of Louis, who by that time had recovered from his injuries enough to be present in court. "I sincerely loved this woman," he said, looking at Melissa. "I was ready to marry her, to provide for her for the rest of her life. But to her, I was just a source of money. When that source dried up, she tried to kill me." "Do you feel anger toward the defendant?" the prosecutor asked. "No, I feel pity. She is so young and already so embittered toward the world that she is willing to kill for money. It's a tragedy, but it doesn't justify attempted murder." The jury deliberated for 2 days. On November 28th, they returned a verdict: guilty on all counts. When announcing the sentence, Judge Margaret Stone said, "Miss Carter, your actions were deliberate and cruel. You took advantage of a man's trust, and when your plans failed, you tried to kill him. The court sentences you to 25 years in prison for attempted murder, 5 years for extortion, and 2 years for illegal possession of a weapon. The sentences will be served consecutively. The total sentence is 32 years in prison." Melissa listened to the sentence without emotion, but as she was led out of the courtroom, she shouted, "It's not fair!" He used me too. Lewis Harrison was present when the sentence was handed down. After the trial, he gave a short interview to a local newspaper. "I want this story to be a lesson to other men my age. Don't let loneliness cloud your judgment. Not all young women who show interest in you are sincere. Be careful." David Harrison, who saved his father's life, told reporters, "I'm glad justice has been served. My father could have died because of this woman's greed. I hope that 32 years in prison will make her rethink her values in life." Margaret Wilson, a neighbor of the family, commented, "This is a tragedy for everyone. Lewis lost his health and his faith in people, and the young woman ruined her life for money. It's very sad." In January 2026, Melissa Carter was transferred to a women's correctional facility in Ohio. Under the terms of her sentence, she will only be eligible for parole in 20 years. Lewis Harrison continued to do business, although the physical consequences of his injuries took their toll. He sold his house on Elm Street and moved to an apartment in the city center, saying that too many bad memories are associated with that place. In February 2026, the Harrison Construction Company established a scholarship fund for students from low-income families. Perhaps if Melissa had had the opportunity to get an education and find a job, the tragedy would not have happened, Lewis said at the fund's opening. Detective Laura Benson, who investigated the case, was promoted to lieutenant and appointed head of the Serious Crimes Unit. The story of Lewis Harrison and Melissa Carter served as a warning to the residents of Riverdale about what greed and manipulation of other people's feelings can lead to. Local newspapers wrote about the case for several months, using it as an example of how quickly a passion for money can turn a person into a criminal. In her last letter from prison, which Melissa sent to a local newspaper, she wrote, "I don't regret trying to change my life. I only regret choosing the wrong way." Perhaps if society gave equal opportunities to everyone, not just the rich, there would be fewer stories like this. But public opinion was unanimous. No circumstances justify attempted murder for money. Melissa Carter's greed cost her her freedom, Lewis Harrison's health, and the peace of mind of the entire family. 32 years later, in 2058, 52-year-old Melissa Carter will be released from prison. Only time will tell what will remain of her youth and ambitions by then.